So first of all, I wanted to say thank you so much for having me. When I find myself in moments like this and I'm asked to share my story, I'm like, is this really my life? What has unfolded, and why is it that people want me to share my story? And so when I woke up this morning, the first thing I thought to myself, I was like, we don't get to choose our story. We don't get to choose what happens the next day. We don't get to choose how long our cycle and circle of life will be. The only thing that I get to choose is how I'm going to make the most of it, or how I'm going to show up for myself or for my children. Because when I'm here, the moment that I wake up and being here, it's taken me a long journey to realize how big of a gift it is. But there was a very long time where it didn't feel like a gift at all, where it really felt like I was in shackles and I didn't want to be here at all. 2.5 years ago, I'm going to go back to 3 years ago, I had a great life. I had a great childhood, a great loving family who I'm so blessed to be a part of. I always knew what I wanted. I went for what I want. I worked hard. I am a hopeful person, a happy person. And I said, and I had this relationship with Hashem. I was like, Hashem, you know what? I'm giving you what I have. I'm enjoying life. Thank you. This is just going great. But I was that person that did have that one nightmare. I don't know if many of you if anyone else can relate, but I was that person who had that one tiny nightmare, which I always brushed off and said, it's never going to happen to me. My life is great. My life is amazing. I married the man of my dreams. I would go to sleep at night and we'd say to each other, we are so lucky. We're so lucky we have children. Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear, okay. And I was like, life is amazing. My favorite thing to talk about with Shua, I would say, what do you think what we're going to do? Where are we going to travel when our kids are all married? What country are we going to end up in? And there was no doubt in my mind that it was never going to happen. I've had a great life. It's going to be a great life. Hashem knows he wants us to be together because we're a dream team. And together, Shua and I, we were going to live our dream. And one day I woke up and my nightmare came true without any prior warning. I thought I wasn't going to cry. I should have brought a box of tissues. The nightmare that I thought was impossible to happen to me actually happened. I woke up one morning. It was a great day. I was pregnant. I said, you know what, I'm going to go to the doctor, get my scan. Thank God it went well. In the afternoon, I got a phone call from my husband, Shua, who was at work. And he called me and he said, Sim, you know what, I'm not feeling so great. I said, okay, okay, that's fine. Maybe take a Tylenol, take an Advil. Okay, so he did. He was chatting with his family, my parents. It was a regular day. He just had a bit of a headache. A few hours later, he gave me another call and he said, Sim, you know what, I really don't feel good. I think I'm going to have to Uber home. So I was like, okay, Uber home. The next 3 days, what we thought was the flu ended up turning into a life-threatening disease that affected Shua's heart and led him into hospital. I was still that hopeful person, but still in shock. And every day I would come home and tell my children, I promise you girls, Daddy's coming home. Daddy's coming home. Because I knew he was. I really knew and I believed he was. There wasn't a chance in my mind. I was like, oh Hashem, this is just a glitch in our dream. You know that, right? It's just a little glitch. But I pleaded with the world and with Hashem at the time. And I said, Hashem, you know what you have to do here, right? You know what you have to do. 3 weeks later, I had lost 30 pounds living in a hospital unit where doctors 3, 4, 5 times a day would come to me and say, your husband's on a thread. The palliative team said to me, he might not be coming home. I said, this is just ridiculous. Of course he's coming home. And then my nightmare came true. I rallied with my family and with my friends, and I felt the entire world rallying with me. I know that in South Africa, I don't even know how many, but what feels like thousands and thousands of prayers and mitzvot and tefillot that were said in Shua's name. I thought they were going to bring him back. But in the end, what they did, they really sent him on this cloud to a place that we don't really understand in this world. And at that point in my life, where I felt like I lost, I felt like the world lost. I felt let down, not only for myself, but I felt let down for the world, who really poured their hearts and their souls into helping Shua come home. The next year was the darkest year of my life, where I said earlier, I didn't want to be here. It didn't feel like a gift to be woken up every day. And in fact, when I was woken up in the morning, I remember there was a few moments where I was clouded in a fuzz, thinking, hey, maybe this is not actually what happened. For a very long time, I spent what I thought was my life. It wasn't my life. I fought. I fought with God. I fought with the world. And I was devastated how the world could keep going. I said, how is it possible that the world is still going when Shua is not here anymore? How is it possible that the sun still rises, the sun still sets, that people are still enjoying the beauty of the beach? I said, it doesn't seem fair. And one day I took a trip to Australia, and I thought on that plane, I said, Hashem, I know I'm going to see Shua right next to me outside. He's going to be there on the window. And then we're all going to go to Eretz Israel and everything will be fine. It's a 24-hour flight. And I didn't watch one movie. I didn't watch anything. I just sat in my dark circle, which I had been in since Shua passed away. But I didn't see Shua outside the window. And day after day, I was defeated. And I was in Australia with my family, and one day I remember watching my brother play with his children. And his child, I heard his child said to him, he said, Daddy, let's go play. And at that moment, I felt so angry and jealous. I was jealous of my own brother with his child. And I said, how come that dad gets to have his child, gets to raise his children? How come that child gets to say, Daddy? And Shua didn't get to. And then I realized I had hit such a low, dark place that I had these thoughts about my own brother and his child. And I realized then that I had been consumed for so long with a real deep anger. I was so angry at Hashem. It was like Hashem and me. And we were in this huge, angry feud. But what I didn't realize was that being angry, I could never understand in the past where people would say, being angry is like idol worship. I was like, okay, it's one of those things people talk about. But here, I finally understood that when you're so angry about something towards someone, to me it was to God, I had no space for anything else, for love, I had no space for life, because I was so consumed by the anger about death. And when I came to this realization, it was never an active choice that I made. Okay, Simi, your grief is going through stages. Now you have to do this. Now, I really feel like I had to feel and hold everything that I did in order to continue making it on my journey. And that was almost like a revelation, that experience with my brother. I was like, how am I living like this? I have fought so long to not be here, but guess what? I don't get to choose that. I'm still here. Every day I woke up and I said, I'm still here. No matter how hard I begged and cried to Hashem to take me and my children, he didn't listen. I felt like there were so many moments where I felt like I was that child. I don't know how many of you have used this method or tried to put their children to sleep and they let them cry in the crib. And the child cries so hard, kicks and screams till they're out of breath, and then they just collapse on the floor, on the bed. I had been fighting with God for so long that I felt like I had nothing left. I was like, God, I have given you everything. I've given you my life. I've given you my soul, and I've even given you my body right now because I just can't do this anymore. I have nothing left to fight with. Although what I didn't understand then, when I realized that I had to let go of this fight, was that I was fighting for a life with Shua in it. And that's why it was so hard to let go. But when I couldn't actually hold that anymore, I had to let go of this fight and say, by not fighting anymore, I have to now accept a life where Shua is not in it the way I thought he would have been. And with that came a whole new wave of grief that I couldn't have expected, because that felt like it was forever. Whereas when I was fighting the reality, I thought, okay, there's going to be an end to this fight and I'm going to get my way. It felt like at that point in my life, it was like a huge surrendering, and it wasn't something that I was like, okay, what comes next? You have to surrender. It just came from a point where I wasn't able anymore to hold something. My body didn't have the power. I was like swimming in an ocean. Imagine swimming in an ocean for days and hours and days and days and days, to the point where you feel like you're going to drown. And when I finally stopped fighting against the current, I felt like my hands were back and I was just floating. And that's when I was just floating in this world. And I said, Hashem, I'm giving you everything I have. I have nothing left. I am here and I am just yours. And I always feel like that surrendering, in a way, was the only way that I was able to understand that I had the ability to choose life. I thought that the things that happened to us and that happened to me is what directed and how I would live my life. But when I was finally able to let go, I was like, oh, I'm actually responsible for my own life. I have a responsibility. I realized no one else can make me live this life. No one else. And this is coming from a place where I had so much family support, and I am so blessed to have my sisters and my friends and the community of the world who I would really not be here without. The tefillot that stuck up, I would physically not be here without the outpouring of love from the world. But no matter how much I knew I knew that no one else would be able to get out of that ocean aside for me. No one else could walk that path. Although for a very long time, I felt like I was this victim and it's a terrible feeling being a victim. Because when I was the victim, I couldn't enjoy the gestures that my friends would give to me. Simi, let's go out. Let's just take a walk. Let's go out for dinner. Let's go see a movie. Let's do nothing. Let's just come over. Me feeling like the victim, it just kept digging me into this hole of, I don't want to be here. I'm never going to be here, and I'm never going to be okay. So after about a year in my house of living with a very dark feeling that sucked the soul out of me and also my family, I realized one day, I said, I know the pain that I'm in, but my kids don't deserve to feel the same way that I do. And it's not fair to them that I have to feel that. It's not fair to them that they lost their father. They deserve a chance. They deserve life. I decided that I need to make a Shabbat in my house. I need to invite people, bring a soul back. If I want to have a chance of just being here, I have to accept, Simi, you can find Shua in another way. He's not going anywhere. He's actually here. And it was me acknowledging that allowed me to say, Simi, you're going to be here. You are in charge of if it's going to be terrible or if you're going to actually live and breathe and smile through it. So I think the first Shabbat that I ever had, I think it was huge in the fact that it was me showing myself that I had a choice in dictating the way I was going to live my life. It didn't mean that I wasn't going to be sad. It meant that I was allowing myself to add happiness. And so I'll never forget the feeling there was. I told my sister to invite friends. I told Shua's brother Menachem to invite friends, and my family came over. There was about 15 people that Friday night, and it was full of tears and it was full of laughter. And it was the first time in my Shabbat, in my family, in my home, where I felt Shua in the biggest way. And I realized the more life I allow in, the more I'm able to see that Shua's life didn't end. And it gave me an awareness and an appreciation of what none of us can feel or touch. And it was about this your program's called Ignite the Soul. And I think my soul felt so dead for so long that finally I was able to connect to Shua on a soul level that had no boundaries. And the only way I was able to really do this was letting go of a reality that was only physical. And it gave me the space to live with another reality. And it's interesting. It's like a lot of people ask me, they say, Simi, I don't know if everyone knows, but I've since remarried, and I can get to that part of the story too. And a lot of people ask me, they say, how do you live those two lives? Because you make sure it's so present in your life, yet you are remarried and so happy. And it's interesting. It's not that I feel like I live two parallel lives that are not connected. It's that it's almost as if, I don't know if anyone remembers over-screen head projectors from school, where there'd be a clear perspex sheet that they would put on the machine, and you would write something on it, and you could put on another sheet and write something else on it. In a way, it feels like my heart is on the bottom of the screen. And now I have the ability to layer on one film and layer on another film, and all of them coexist at the same time. Me being able to understand that I can hold a life that I know is no longer here in the way that we all are, has been the most powerful tool for me to live with joy and happiness. And a lot of the times I'll speak to Shua's mom, and I'll speak to Yaniv about this, and how when you're in a very dark place and down and you feel like you're at the bottom of the pit, it feels impossible to get out. It feels like the light is so far away. How are you going to do that? But if I am able to lift myself out and say, Simi, there's more to this picture than just the world that we see and know. This world is about purpose. It's about meaning. It's about finding connection to your soul that is not reliant on just the way we get dressed or do things. And it's me being able to tap into that, I would say, infiniteness that has been able to give me the ability to really find love and happiness. Because I've come to a place where I understand that in this physical world, we are limited. We're limited with what is designed for us. We're limited with health. And every single day, unfortunately, there's so many different things around the world that we can feel so down about. But at the same time, when I realize for myself that doesn't have to define me, because there's so much else as well, that's when I can find the happiness. And I don't have to, it's not like anymore I have to choose, oh, I'm only going to be sad or I'm going to be happy. I get to realize that I'm a human being. We were designed to hold both. And understanding that allows me to hold both. And I think if you need to interrupt at all with any questions, or do you want me to keep going? I think I'm going to keep going with the part where I met Yaniv and how I met him, because I remember when I was in my green pasture postcard life, when everything was perfect and my life was going to end up perfectly, it was always even as a child, I remember I used to ask my teachers and my parents, I would say, what happens when Mashiach comes and people get remarried or their spouse passes away? It was something that baffled me as a child. And I think deep down my soul knew that this was going to be something, a part of my story. And even as an adult, I admired people that had love and lost that love and then got remarried. And it baffled me. I said, how do they do it? And to me, I'm going to sound like that cliche postcard, that love is eternal. I never understood, I never fathomed how eternal love could really be until I was in a position where I actually felt it for myself, where it wasn't something that would start and stop. And that I came to the point, it was at Shua's yard site, actually, his first yard site. My family went away my family and Shua's family and friends went away for Shabbat. And after Shabbat, we had a kumzitz. And I remember feeling so alone and vulnerable, because I was used to being with people and friends all the time with my husband. Not that I wasn't a confident person, not that I couldn't be around friends, but there was always something so safe and comforting knowing that, oh, there's my person, he's right there. I don't have to worry about a thing because he's always with me. And when he wasn't, I didn't feel that. It felt very vulnerable being by myself. And I remember at that yard everyone was over, and it was, in a way, it was kind of worse than the shiver, because the fight was over. The fight was over, and I was like, oh, this is real. And I walked upstairs, and I had been crying for hours, and I walked upstairs and I said to Shua, and I said, Shua, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I can't do it. And it was through that process of being and feeling the grief and the sadness that really came before me being able to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I don't want to be that sad person that my friends don't want to be around, that my family can't talk about happy things because they feel bad for me. I want to be that person where people want to be around me, where my children grow up saying I had the best life and I had the best family. And then I realized that no one was going to take my sadness of Shua away, but no one was going to take away my happiness either. And so understanding that, I finally gave myself permission to be happy and receive happiness. And I finally gave myself permission to say, you know what, Simi? You are sad about Shua, but you can still have an amazing life. You can still have a great life, and you are going to be happy. And it was around that time, I would say 2 months later, where Yaniv entered my life, and he came to a Shabbat where I said to my sisters, just invite people. And he came to a Shabbat. I didn't know him. I knew his music a little bit. And there was a soul connection moment, which was bigger, which I understood then was bigger than myself. And I was like, oh, Hashem, so you have there's a long road ahead of me. I was like, what's going on here? My son, Joshi, was about 4 months old, and he was shy. He wasn't around that many people because I never really had people over for Shabbat. And he was being passed around from person to person, and he was just crying. And all of a sudden, Yaniv was one of the guests that my brother-in-law had brought over. He took Joshi and he held him, and Joshi just stopped crying. And he started smiling. And to anyone else in the room, it was not a big deal. Okay, great, thank God the baby stopped crying. But to me, something so powerful overcame me. And it didn't come from a romantic place at all, because at the time, my sister had called me and they said, Simi, you want to think about dating? I said, don't even mention that word to me ever again. I'm never going to date. I dated once in my life. If Shua wants to meet someone, he'll send them to my door. And at that point, I felt my soul like receiving something. I was like, this is not just Joshi crying. Okay, next, push out of your head, because who am I to start? Again, I was constantly in this place of not giving myself permission to really live and thrive. So even initially in the beginning of that relationship with Yaniv, it was very important for me to understand that I didn't have to apologize to myself for wanting that happiness. I had to really give myself permission and say, Simi, you are allowed to be happy. You are allowed to feel a connection with someone else who you feel like will complete your life and who is a part of your life. And that is really when the journey of Yaniv and I came into more and more of a reality over those few months. And I struggled in the beginning with that balance of being happy and understanding that that it was okay. Like, and understanding that dichotomy and learning how to live with that balance has really given me the best, most stable feeling of life. That sadness doesn't have to direct me, and it doesn't have to diminish the infinite happiness that we as human beings deserve. And so by choosing to go down this path with Yaniv, I felt that soul connection again, that I was a part of something bigger, something that I couldn't see and couldn't feel, but I knew it was there. And I'm just checking the time.
Good. You're doing good. You're doing good.
Okay. And I feel, I want to say that I feel so blessed. I really feel, in my life, if you would have told me before marrying Shua and after losing Shua that I would ever say I'm blessed again, I wouldn't have believed anyone. If Shua would have told me, Simi, I promise you, because I did, I had dreams where he said, Simi, I promise you, you're going to be okay. I wouldn't have believed it. When I tell you now that I feel so blessed for the life that Hashem gives me every day, it's like a huge physical breath of air that gets inserted to my body, where I know that it's not about designing or choosing the perfect life that we get, because that's not what we were here for. I think before we all came down, that we miss in the manual here, Hashem says, I'm not going to promise you that it's going to be easy. It's going to be hard. But you do have it within inside yourself. You do have it to be the best version of yourself. And I feel so fortunate for the space that my family and friends gave me to grieve, to feel the pain. I feel fortunate for not having to be rushed out of it when I wasn't ready. And I feel fortunate that I also was able to feel a different connection with Hashem and not just that darkness and anger. And I think holding that was kind of like my rope guide that I was kind of like pulling along. I felt like I was in this trapdoor in this black room with no one and nothing but blackness. But I did feel, and I think this is the power of the human spirit. And it's interesting, I'll just go back to that no matter how dark it got, I felt somewhere deep inside that there was a rope. There was a rope, but I never wanted to pull it. And it kind of reminded me that after Shul passed away, there was no books I could read. I couldn't read anything else. The only thing I could pick up and sometimes read was a book by Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. And I would say to myself, Simi, your grandparents lost their entire families when they were 15, 16. They saw their grandparents get herded onto cattle cars. Your grandparents' siblings had a tattoo on their arm because they lived watching their parents and the siblings going to gas chambers. Some days I would say to myself, Simi, if they could do it, who am I? Who am I to say I can't? So I would read his book a lot, and I found that it wasn't that it gave me the light at the end of the tunnel. It almost made me say, Simi, you don't have a choice. Look what they did. You don't have a choice. You have to do it too. You owe it to those other people who have suffered and who found their own light. And I think it's been me being able to, my survival, I attribute a lot to finding and tapping into spirituality and giving myself permission to be happy, knowing that being in this world is always going to be hard. Everyone has their own story. So many people go through challenges and hard times, and we could technically, do you hear background noise? Okay. So many of us could say to ourselves, well, I have permission to be an angry person who no one wants to be around because I've had a terrible life. And God forbid, I would never want to take away anyone's pain or struggle or the time that anyone needs, whether it's their whole life, because I could never judge anyone else's pain or suffering. But reading that book gave me a bit of a push to say, you know what, Simi, we have both. That's what we have. That's what our life is about. And it's about knowing that we can have suffering, but we can also have meaning and love and life. And my relationship with Yaniv is based on that, is based on believing in that love is eternal, that one love doesn't take away from another. It's about understanding and appreciating the blessing that I have, and it's about appreciating the happiness that I, as a human being with my family, can choose to find and to have and to continue to create. And I also want to give so much, I want to give so much praise and recognition to Yaniv. And I think when we got engaged, the first thing I wrote and I shared on with the amazing community that has created our social media community, I said, I have an angel in heaven and an angel on this earth. And when I say that, it's not to take away from the work that Yaniv puts in every single day to be married to me and our family, because angel almost gives it like, oh, let's just show up. But I attribute a lot of where I am to the unbelievable human being that he is, to the space that he gave me from the beginning, to the space for sure that he gave in our family, and for the space for both of us to navigate together how and where we welcome Shua in. And I'm just going to end
The three Shua.
Yeah, I was just going to end with that.
Yeah.
It was my son, Joshi. He was born 4 months after Shua passed away, and we named him Yehoshua Raphael after Shua. And if I could tell you that what a light, I was so upset at Hashem. I said, how could you make me pregnant if you took away that child's father? And what I realize now, that blessings and light that come into your life, that have come into my life, Joshi he held everything. When I was pregnant, he held the sorrow, the sadness, the loss. And now he holds the light and the life. And he's saying, Mommy, you see, he's not saying this, I feel that. He's saying, Mommy, you see, Shua's here in all different ways. And we're going to be happy because from day one, he's just been smiling and happy, and it's been a light. For me, I remember nursing him, tearing, but also feeling such happiness and joy, which is the most amazing, crazy, wild feeling. It was his second birthday on Pesach. And for those of you who don't, and I'm not sure if anyone knows, Yaniv's middle name is Yehoshua. And I feel like I said, Yaniv gave me the space that I needed to grieve about Shua in this space. But I feel like, and this was also something part of that soul connection, I always felt like him and Shua had their own like brother relationship going on. I was like, okay, what do you guys are in on something that I don't know. And when I found out his middle name was Yehoshua, I'm like, no, that's just a joke, but it's not a joke. And so on Joshi's second birthday, it was the end of the day, and I was like, oh, we forgot to say his Tehillim for the day, something that we do on their Jewish birthdays. And Yaniv obviously did it with him, and he was sitting with Joshi on his lap, and he said, Simi, you're not going to believe this. And he screenshot the Tehillim and he sent it to me. And there were the three, it said Yehoshua 3 times in his Tehillim. And it's kind of just like a feeling, an attitude that we base our lives on. And I think it's something that we've chosen to find, because I think it's always there. I can either turn away from it, or I can look for it. And I've looked for it and found these things. So I feel so blessed that Yaniv is someone who is able to say, Simi, look at this. There are 3 Yehoshuas in this Tehillim on Joshy's birthday. And I would say that is the foundation of the way we raise our family, of respect for each other's story and each other's life, and bringing that together. And again, I hope this was hopeful or meaningful in some ways. And thank you so much for having me share my story.
I think it was profound hour. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm just giving a shout out, Simi, to your Chevet, who is there. Chev, thank you.
I
very
can't
much.
see her, but oh my goodness, I wish I could.
There. Can you see her? There she is.
I can't, but I just want to say, Yocheved, I didn't know Yocheved at all. And I got this message on my phone. And I just want to say to any of you in the audio, in the Zoom meeting who spent time davening or had a good thought or tzedakah or anything you did, when I say that you have given so much life to our family and to Shua's memory, I am forever indebted to you and so grateful for everything you did. And it was not for nothing, it was for everything. It was, Shua was like led on this beautiful cloud of people's hearts and tears. And that will forever be with me and my family. And for me to be able to tell our children that one day is something that I'll never take for granted. So thank you. And Yocheved is one of those amazing women who reached out to me in the beginning. And she sent me a message and I remember responding, but I didn't really believe what she said. And she's a woman who I am so inspired by. And I had the pleasure of meeting in Crown Heights. And I am so in awe of her and what she's done. And I'm so glad that she's here. So hi, Yocheved.
All right. Simi, that was profound. Thank you. I haven't received any questions, so I'm not sure if anybody wants to ask a question, but they are sending to say thank you for your inspiration. Thank you for your courage, that they found it so meaningful and so deep. And people have said you've given them so much hope. And there's Andy who's holding up Man's Search for Meaning. So she said, thank you for giving us Man's Search for Meaning. And we just want to thank you because you've been a ray of light tonight. That even though amongst the darkness, you brought in the ray of light. And we are so very grateful as a community to have had this privilege to listen to you. And we look forward, Simi, and I'm putting it out there across the airwaves, to welcome you into South Africa, to do a safari with you and Yaniv and the children.
Oh, we would love to.
And really, I cannot thank you. I know that your time is precious, and I know that you had to organize child care today. So thank you, and special love to Yaniv from all of us.
Thank you so much.
Really, everybody, thank you for coming. There are so many people listening tonight, and we are so grateful. And we wish a refuah shlema for everybody that needs it.
Amen. Amen.
Much love. Thank you, Simi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.